Hi, friends, and welcome to another episode of Regarding Consciousness. I am Jennifer K. Hill, CEO of om-heals.com and Optimal Match. We are here today with a guest I've had the pleasure of interviewing a few times before, and I love having him on each and every time, Dr. Bradley Nelson. He is the author of the best-selling book, The Emotion Code, as well as his new book, Body Code. And if you are not familiar with his work, it is pretty prominent. He has trained over 10,000 healers around the world, ranging from traditional physicians, chiropractors, energetic healers, and a myriad of other people. And his work has really been pivotal and transformational. In fact, we have several emotion code practitioners on our Om Heals platform, and everybody always loves the sessions when they get them done. So, Dr. Brad, it's always a pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much for being back with us again.
Well, Jennifer, thank you so much for having me on. It's great to be here.
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, you published this first book, The Emotion Code, in 2007. It was an immediate bestseller, went viral around the world, and then you published a later expanded upon version, I believe it was in 2019, correct?
Right, exactly. The first one was self-published, and then we did a hardcover version in 2019 with St. Martin's Press, and that's what it looks like.
And then tell us, you have this incredible new book out called The Body Code that I believe was just released this year, a couple months ago, right?
It just came out in February, right? Exactly, and it looks like this,
Awesome.
and yeah, it's
Yeah,
fun.
I think probably the most jarring thing for anybody who's going to pick up the book and read it is to understand how many people around the world, but in particular, I remember being staggered by the statistic that you shared, Dr. Brad, where you talk about how I think it's 150 million Americans, 47% of the population, are currently struggling with some sort of chronic disorder of some sort or another and are just living with this pain in their lives. Is that accurate?
Well, it is, and it's sad, and it's also unnecessary. The fascinating thing that I have learned in all of these 30 plus years being a holistic physician is that when we have symptoms of one kind or another, whether they're physical or mental or emotional, whether they're physical pain or migraine headaches or neck pain or back pain or elbow pain or knee pain, or whether it's some other kind of a problem like digestive disorders or asthma or infertility or depression or anxiety or phobias or panic attacks or PTSD or eating disorders or some kind of self sabotage. All of these problems are pretty common. But the fascinating thing that you have to realize is that all of these things are really not the problems. What these things are is the message.
Mm.
These things are all the message that there's something going on within the body that needs to be addressed. And so it's so interesting because Western medicine looks at all of these things, all of these symptoms as the problem. And so they'll use pharmaceutical drugs or other things to try to suppress the message, to suppress the symptom, but the symptom is the message. And so a symptom should be the beginning of a dialogue with the subconscious mind, with the inner computer, to find out why the symptom is existing. And all the work that I have been so privileged to be able to bring into the world is about this whole idea, this whole concept that symptoms are a message. And you can ask the subconscious mind, the computer within, why that message is there, why those symptoms are there, and it will tell you. And you can find the underlying reasons for things. And the emotion code is all about finding the emotional baggage, of course, that is the underlying reason behind so many things. I mean, 90%, for example, of people's physical pain is due to emotional baggage. Um, 80% of the problems that we suffer from, mental, emotional, physical, have their root in emotional baggage, trapped emotional energies. The body code covers the rest of it. And with the body code, during the years that I was in practice, what I found was that there are really 6 different kinds of imbalances that cause all of our symptoms. And you can see a picture of those here. And those are things like pathogens, where we get little infections going on in the body. I'll show you pictures of these, the pictures that we use for the book. You can find out if you've got some kind of low level pathogen in the body that is sapping your energy and making you ill. Another category is what we call circuits and systems, where you might find that you've got an imbalance in a meridian. And you can do this yourself. You might find you've got a chakra that's out of balance, or that there's a disconnection going on between the spirit and the physical body. I mean, there are things in here that you'll never see or find in any other system. Also, of course, misalignments are very common, and you can actually find and correct those in most cases yourself, because usually those misalignments that we have of the spine and of other tissues are actually caused by emotional baggage or other things. Another category is toxins. You might find that those mercury fillings that you had when you were a kid, those are still haunting you and making you ill. Nutrition and lifestyle, that's another area where you might find you have a deficiency of a certain vitamin or mineral, or maybe you need a certain essential oil, things like that. So the body code really is all the knowledge that I was able to gain during all of those years in practice, working with really sick people that have been told in many cases that there was no hope for them at all in Western medicine. And see, as a holistic doctor, I didn't even have a license to prescribe drugs to suppress people's symptoms, to silence the message, right? I couldn't do that. Didn't have a license to do that. Didn't want to do that anyway, right? I didn't have a license to do surgery on people to remove troublesome organs and things. So I was left with this dilemma, Jennifer, having to actually figure out what was really wrong with people, and that's what I did. And there were a couple of really important things. I mean, number one, I learned fairly early on that we all have this computer within us that has all the answers and knows with a perfect understanding what's wrong with us and why we're manifesting symptoms and things, why we can't find love, or why we can't make money, or why we can't conceive a child, or whatever it is, right? The subconscious knows all of those things. It knows the reasons for those messages, for those symptoms, you see. And the other key, really, for me was that I was asking for help all the time. I just felt like, you know, I don't know how to do this. I need all the help I can get. And I learned at a very young age that there's a higher power that we can draw upon. And so what I would do before I would work on somebody is I would just take a moment and just silently ask for help, just acknowledge that I needed help, and I'd ask for help. And it was a totally private, totally personal habit. But I'll tell you something, there were times during those years when a person would come in to see me and I didn't know how to approach their problem, I didn't know how to help them. And in answer to that silent prayer for help, that plea for help, information sometimes would just flood in like an avalanche of understanding. And that didn't happen very often, but it did happen, which taught me that higher power, whatever you want to call it, God, source energy, creator, whatever, that higher power is totally aware of what we're doing all the time. And when we ask for help, it opens that conduit for us. And so that's really where this work has really come from. It doesn't have anything to do with me, except that I'm just the teacher. I just work here. That's what I tell people.
I love that. That is such a beautiful, beautiful anecdote around that, because a dear friend of mine and I were on a call the other day, and she has something called the Be Love principles. And she said, Jen, one day I woke up and I realized I have these principles, but they're not my principles. There's the principles and there's love and there's me, and we all kind of work in a trifecta. And I think the best teachers and healers and wisdom keepers like yourself, Dr. Brad, are the people who are willing to acknowledge there is no ego involved. We are merely just conduits for wisdom and energy and healing to flow through. And I love the analogy in the book to tie it into the symptoms you were referring to. It's like a check engine light in your car, right? So many of
Exactly right.
that's what you say in the book. And, so many of us, we go through our whole lives and we would not drive our car an extra 500, 5,000, let alone 5 miles if a check engine light came on. Yet, if any of us get a sore throat, back pain, whatever it might be, we might ignore it for months, years, or decades, or a lifetime, and
Yeah.
wonder at why we're still suffering emotionally, physically, and mentally, right?
Absolutely. That's how we That's how we do things. And it's because somewhere long, long ago, I think this knowledge was known, but then it was lost. And we're living in a time in the world, I think, when um, all of mankind's knowledge, everything that man has ever known, is being restored back to the earth. And things that have never been known, I think, are becoming known. And the consciousness level of the world, as I see it, is it's like a balloon. And
Mm,
every day it gets a little bigger and a little bigger and a little bigger. And it's not going back. And I think that's the beautiful thing about this time that we're living in, is that uh, there's a future that's coming. And that future is going to be a world unlike um, anything I think that the world has probably ever seen before. And it's going to be a little rough, I think, getting there, but we'll get there. Um, Prophets and holy men of all types and religions throughout all the ages have talked about the time that we're living in right now.
mm,
And many of them have looked forward to being able to live in this time. But we're here now and we're seeing all of these amazing things. We also see the turmoil that's going on, but that's okay. The earth is in labor and it's going to give birth before long, and it's going to be a whole new world. These healing methods, really, I believe, are part of that. See, because in order for the earth to transform, we need to transform individually. We need to get
mm,
rid of our emotional baggage. We need to get rid of all these check engine lights we have by understanding the true reasons for them, so that we can get well, so that we can be better instruments in the hands of that higher power, whatever you believe. Because love is going to transform the world. And what these things do, what these methods do, and there are lots of other methods too that are coming into the world, and it's awesome. What these methods do is they help us to unblock our ability to love, to give and receive love, so that we can really become um, higher level beings. We can ascend. And ascension, to me, really is all about love. It's all about our ability to love others unconditionally. And it's our baggage. It's the walls that we build up around our hearts that are made of emotional baggage. It's all of that. As we start to get rid of all of that, that falls away. We step out of the old person that we were into this new person that really is the old person, the person who we were really intended to be.
mm.
And I've heard that from so many people so many times. I was doing a book signing the other day, and there was a woman that came up to me and talked to me, and she said that for so many years she had struggled with her connection to that higher power,
Mm.
and she wanted to be connected but wasn't, and then she started removing her emotional baggage with the emotion code and got rid of her heart wall. And all of a sudden, it's like she stepped into this new place where she's communicating with that higher power all the time and being guided all the time in all the things that she does. And it was just a beautiful thing.
I so resonate with that. As you said that, Dr. Brad, I remember one of the very first intuitives I worked with probably a decade and a half ago. And he was a German guy, and he said, "Oh, you have blackness around your heart." And I had
Yeah.
no idea what that even meant. I was like, who is this guy? Is he off his rocker? What is he talking about? And a divorce and a complete transformation spiritually later, now it's like you feel it. You feel when either your own heart is open or closed, or when someone else's is. And I think the greatest thing you point out too, it's about that self-awareness, our subconscious and the subconscious of others, Dr. Brad. That's the thing that
Mhm.
boggles my mind is we are in this symphony of communication with all
Mhm.
of the souls around us, ranging from our
Yes.
parents, our colleagues, even what some might call your enemies. And yet, what we don't realize is that we're all here to help come back to the point you just made, to learn to love everybody, even
Yep.
the person who's sitting there poking your button every day. Like I remember there's this great story from a Kabbalistic teacher of mine who once shared that this woman she was coaching came to her and said, "Oh, I hate this woman. She comes to my desk every day and she talks like this and is always popping her head over and saying she wants to have lunch." And she's like, "I just want to get rid of her." And this woman had been studying Kabbalah and many other things. And she said, I know that spiritually speaking, I must be doing this to someone in my life, but I can't see it. So she really deep dove into it. And guess what she realized, Dr. Brad?
Mm.
She realized she was doing that to her husband. And the moment she saw
Wow.
that as soon as her husband would she would get home, he worked from home, she would be nagging him and like, what are you doing? Yeah, can I get some time? Can I get some energy? And the moment she had that epiphany, the woman was transferred to another office and she didn't even exist in her world anymore. And
Sure. Isn't that how it works? It's
but that's
amazing.
not healing though. That's, the mental, emotional, physical healing and tying it into the individuals you were speaking about. One of my dear friends who I think from the work we all do is Teresa Collins, who likes to quote Barbara Marx Hubbard about how we are all these islands of coherence. And no matter where we are at in our awakening as individuals, when enough of us, enough Dr. Brads, enough Teresas or whomever's, all kind of pop like popcorn around the world, then
Mhm.
these little islands of coherence create a container and almost and actually literally a magnetic force that then propels everybody else into this higher level of consciousness, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree with that more. That's exactly what's happening. And people have seen that. People have seen it happen. I've talked with people, I've been teaching seminars for many years all over the world. And I have, I've had all kinds of experiences where, in fact, let me share one with you that I
Yeah,
think
please.
you'll like. I don't think I've ever told this one on a show before. And by the way, if you're the woman who told me this story, please get a hold of me. I'd love to get this in writing. But we did a tour of the world in 2010 for the Emotion Code book. And there was a woman that came up to me at the very beginning of the very first seminar, which I thought was kind of symbolic. And she said, I need to tell you a story. And she said that a friend of hers had given her the Emotion Code book a couple of weeks before. And her friend didn't say anything about it. She just said, Here, you need to read this. And so she started reading it. And she was somewhere in the first or second chapter. And all of a sudden, she has this waking vision where she is sitting in her living room and the roof of her house detaches and starts floating up into the air. And she starts following it. She's kind of connected to it somehow. Pretty soon she can see over the walls of her house. And what she sees is that the roof of her neighbor's house is detached. And in fact, the roof of every home in the whole city is detached, and all these roofs are going up into the air. And pretty soon she can see into other homes and she sees what's going on, that there are people sitting in all of these homes, sitting in a circle, and they're all being taught from this book, The Emotion Code, right? And they're all learning how to do this process, the emotion code. And as she gets higher and higher and higher, she sees the same thing going on in other cities in her state, and then in other cities in every state. And as she gets higher into the atmosphere, she sees this is going on all over the whole entire world. And then all of a sudden, the vision ends, and she looks at the book and she thinks, what in the world? What is this? And so, that's just one. But, there are other people who have had other amazing. In fact, can I share one more with you?
Yeah, please. I love it. I bought as a quick testimonial for Dr. Brad. The moment I did the first interview with him a few years ago, I went out and bought everyone I knew a copy of your book. So I believe in it.
Well, it's true and it works. There was a woman that wrote to me right after the Emotion Good book came out. And she said that back in the early 70s, she had been beaten by her husband and died. And she went to the other side and she went through the light, went to the light through the tunnel back before she knew anything about that. She was very young and living somewhere in East Coast. And she comes out on the other side in this place of love, right? And total acceptance and beauty. And this person comes up to her and doesn't speak, but communicates to her and says, it's not your time yet. You're not supposed to be here. She says, well, I want to stay. And he said, well, it's not your time. And then he turns around and he confers with some other angelic beings, apparently. And apparently he gets permission to show her something. So he comes back and they turn around and she realizes for the first time that they're actually above the earth. And they're looking down on the earth, looking down kind of on the southwestern part of the US. And she can see people on the earth, on the ground, that are dressed in white and they're swiping down people's backs. And she understands that she's one of these people that's dressed in white. And she says to the angel, she says, are we nurses? What are we doing? He said, no, you're not nurses. And she said, well, what is it that we're doing to people? And she said that sometimes it was a couple of people working on one person, or sometimes it was a group of people. And he said, what you're doing is you're opening people's hearts.
Oh,
And in
oh,
that moment, she said, just as you're talking about, this consciousness happened where all of these people that were doing this separate work all over the world suddenly became connected energetically. And at that moment, this divine energy from where she was came down into the world and entered into the backs of these people and came out through their hearts into the whole world. And it filled this light, filled every crack and every crevice in the whole world. And there was no darkness in the world ever again. And then at that moment, she wakes up on the floor bleeding, I guess, because she was dead, but she survived it. And so she felt like she had this mission in her life. And so she started studying, trying to figure out what this meant. And this woman studied and got more certificates and more degrees than anybody that I've ever met in my life. And it was only until many years later, one day, a friend of hers was becoming certified in the emotion code. And she volunteered to be a volunteer and to have a session done. And at a certain point, her friend said, okay, well, let's check your heart and see if we can open your heart. And her head snapped around and she said, what did you just say? And it's all about that wall being around the heart. And so, see, we don't have to fix everybody in the world. We just have to reach the tipping point, and we're getting closer and closer to that all the time.
oh, I love that. Yeah, it reminds me of a visual. Kabbalistically, they say that if you look at every kind word, every time you open a door or smile at someone, as a little itty bitty sesame seed of goodness, that on the scales of like a good and evil, if you want to call it that, that you add an extra sesame seed to the scales of good. And then every time you're unkind or selfish or greedy or whatever it is, you add a sesame seed to the side of darkness, or if you want to call it evil or bad. And the whole idea, to your point, Dr. Brad, is to hit that tipping point where enough seeds of good cause
Yep.
all seeds of negativity or whatever you might want to call them to fall over onto the side of good. It's almost like we're playing this cosmic game of good and evil.
Yeah, that's exactly what's going on. It's all about light and darkness, and it's so interesting to me that uh, this whole existence that we're in, I believe this earth was created for us. When people die and they go to the other side, one of the things that they talk about is how they feel totally accepted, sometimes for the first time in their lives. Well, total acceptance like that is the fruit of unconditional love, and that's what the Creator has for us, is unconditional love. um, that Creator, I've experienced that love, and I know that Creator, God, I refer to God as our Father, and we all have different terms and things we use, but I think it's all the same. But I think that Creator, that higher power, has nothing but love for us, and that's why we're here, and why we're in these bodies. I mean, think about these bodies that we're living in. These bodies of ours are made of pure energy.
Mm,
And the fact that, to us, they seem solid and they have weight is more of an illusion than anything else.
mm,
And so these bodies consist of all of these subatomic energies, an innumerable number of them, really, almost, that are all flying in formation, giving us this experience we're having in this world from one moment to another. Every moment of life is a complete miracle. And it's an ongoing miracle every moment, giving us the chance to ascend, right? And to choose light and choose love and grow and progress. And this is just a waypoint on our journey, really, through the eternities. It's great to be here, though.
oh, it's amazing. And I really cannot recommend people go out and pick up your book, The Body Code, of course, and The Emotion Code enough, because in the book, too, you share such a beautiful story of being a young man, 13 years old, and struggling with your own health crises where you didn't know if you were going to make it. I think you were given a 50-50 chance to live yourself at that age, right?
Yeah, I found that out later from my parents, and it was there was nothing medically that could be done for me. And I mean, the pains were just horrific that I would get out of the blue. And my parents took me to see some old time holistic doctors that practiced in a trailer house. in the middle of a wheat field on the outskirts of Great Falls, Montana, where we lived. And as soon as they started working on me, I could feel my body responding. And within a few weeks, I was completely well. And the medical tests that were rerun proved it. And I decided at that point, this is what I want to do with my life. I want to be a doctor, but I want to be a doctor like these guys. And if I needed to spend the rest of my life practicing in a trailer house in the middle of a muddy wheat field on the edge of town, that was totally okay with me because I thought, well, that seemed to be the natural habitat of doctors that actually got results. So,
I was with you. I never in a million years thought I would believe in any of this. And then I remember it was 2009 and I had been back and forth to Europe 3 times and I thought I had a 4-day hangover. You know how it is in your 20s. You just have a lot of fun.
sure,
And it turned out I had swine flu. I had a fever of 104 and damn near died from it. And I
uh,
couldn't even get off the couch out of bed. And there was nothing doctors could do because by the time I'd figured out I had it, it was past the time that you could do anything medically right for it. And a friend of mine who was part of a networking group heard that I was down with swine flu and couldn't move. And he said, Jen, get somebody to carry you, bring you to my acupuncture office. And I don't know how or how it all happened. It was all blurry. You know, you're in that fugue and haze of fever. And somebody
sure.
got me to his office. And within a few hours of my very first acupuncture treatment, I was completely healed and back to normal after having been bedridden with a fever of 104 for 3 or 4 days.
Yeah, awesome.
Devotee of all things energy medicine. That's why, I love
Yeah.
having people like you on the show. And we didn't even get into it, Dr. Brad, but if you could just give us like a little teaser. I remember in our first interview we did, you introduced me to the sway test. And of course, there's the magnets that you're using to help align people. Give us maybe one tidbit or takeaway of one of your favorite healing modalities that people can use from your emotion code or body code work.
Um, you mean a testing method?
Yeah, testing method. I love them. Muscle testing, sway
Sure.
testing. You changed my life when you taught me about sway testing a couple of years ago.
Sure. Well, let me share the sway test. It's
Yeah.
really, really simple. And most people can do this without any trouble right away. So, first of all, if you think about a plant, put a plant near a window. If you don't keep rotating the pot, the plant's going to end up bowed to one side because it's always trying to bend over to get the light from the window, right? It's trying to move in that direction. That's a positive input. On the other hand, they've done studies and have found that plants will actually grow towards soothing, beautiful music coming out of a speaker in the room if the light has uniform lighting. On the other hand, plants will grow away from harsh negative sounds and inputs. If a drop of poison gets put into an aquarium, fish will sense that, they'll swim away to cleaner water and so on. Well, the human body has this same ability and capacity. And so we call this the sway test. Now, this does work best if you're standing. So if you're listening or watching, you can stand right now and do this, and I'll walk you through it. You can also do this if you're sitting right on the very edge of your chair. Um, it it works that way, but it's best if you're standing. So anyway, what to do? Stand up, drop your hands down to your sides, close your eyes, take a deep breath, let it out, and just allow yourself to totally relax. Now, the first thing that you'll notice as you're standing there totally relaxed is that there's a little bit of movement going on, a little bit of oscillation. Your body might move a little to the left or right, or maybe forward or back a little. And that's just your postural muscles working. It's impossible to stand perfectly straight, right? That's normal. But let's have you think about some things now, kind of like light, okay, or darkness for the plant, right? Moving one way or the other. Your body will tend to sway backward if you're holding thoughts of negativity or falsehood or incongruency. Your body will tend to sway forward if you're holding thoughts of positivity or love, congruency, things like that. So, what I want you to do, we'll start with something negative, okay? As you're standing there, arms down by your sides, eyes closed, think for a moment about the word war. Now, we hear that word all the time, don't we? And there's, of course, war going on now. There have been wars going on probably all of our lives and before from the very beginning, right? What I'd like you to think about for a moment is what really goes on in war. What's really happening on a human level? Try to imagine for a moment that you can comprehend all the things that have been done in all the wars. I mean, imagine that. Of all the tears that have been shed. Think of all the families destroyed, all the lives destroyed from war. Such a horrible thing that goes on this planet. And as you think about that, as you think about what's really going on a human level in war, the moment your subconscious mind connects with what you are consciously thinking about in that moment, your body will start to involuntarily sway backward. And that's your subconscious mind moving you away from the sheer negativity of that thought of war. Now, and if that didn't work for you, you can try this later, okay? But usually within 3 to 10 seconds, you will have this reaction, but you don't want to force it. You just allow your subconscious to speak to you. Now, let's try something different. I'd like you to imagine that 1,000 years have gone by. Okay, close your eyes once again, just stand there relaxed. Imagine that we're 1,000 years into the future now. And imagine that you're still alive, but of course, you're not the same person that you used to be, because now you are living in this place of perfect unconditional love. You're just being bathed constantly in this field of pure love, this high vibration. Not only that, imagine that you have changed and you have become a person of unconditional love yourself. And imagine that your ability to love others unconditionally has magnified to the point that your love for all of creation, for all beings, is so big that your heart cannot even contain that love. And that love that you have for everything expands out from your heart and it fills the world, and it goes out and fills the immensity of space. I mean, imagine what it would be like to be a being that is developed to that degree, ascended to that degree. Now, as you think about that, what that would feel like, your body will tend to sway forward. And that's your subconscious mind, the heart within you, that is trying to move you in that direction, because that is a future. See, that is a potential future for you and for all of us. And so this is the sway test. Now, what you can do with the sway test on a more practical level is you can ask questions. You can ask, do I have a trapped emotion? And you can allow that answer to manifest either as forward or back. Forward for yes, back for no. In the body code, we teach you how this works. And you can look at this map and you can ask, do I have an imbalance somewhere on this map? And maybe you get a forward sway for yes. And then you can ask, okay, is it on the left side of this chart? And maybe you sway backward. That's a no. So maybe it's on the right side. Maybe you find out, oh, it's not a pathogen. Maybe it's some kind of misalignment. And then, you can be taken deeper into these areas and find out what's really going on. It's the most amazing thing for me to see people for the first time all of a sudden learn the language of their own computer and find their own imbalances. It's the most amazing thing. And it's so fun. And it works.
I love it. I love it so much. I know I was with Bruce Lipton a couple of months ago in Hungary for a thing he was delivering, and it was amazing because he was just showing me I could never get muscle testing to work, and he showed me that as well. And I know you talk about that in the book. And we start to realize that we're really these super human beings that have these potentialities to heal ourselves.
Yes,
And so,
absolutely.
Dr. Brad, we could talk for hours. Obviously, we're going to
We
have you on
could.
more shows. We'll have you on the Global Coherence Pulse one day soon. Where is the best place for people to connect with you if they want to reach out, if they want to become an emotion or body code practitioner or learn
Yeah.
more? Where would they go to do so?
Well, the best place is our website. Our main website is at Discover Healing, HEALING.com. And there's lots of information there. If you want to find a practitioner, we've got a map of practitioners around the world. We've got our courses there. You can sign up there for a course and really learn this material really well. My own personal blog is at drbradleynelson.com. That's DRBRADLEYNELSON.com. And yeah, so that's my personal blog. Discover Healing is the main site. And of course, the books are available everywhere books are sold. Amazon, Barnes and Noble. There's so many others. And you should be able to pick one up at your local bookstore or order one. And both of these books have about about a 4.6 rating. Even if you wrote a book that was absolutely perfect, no one will ever get a 5. It's as high as it
I have
gets,
faith in you. Your
4.6.
third book, the trilogy, will be a 5. I love it though, Dr. Brad. I can't endorse your books enough. He is doing incredible work, and I really encourage you go check out these books because it's hands-on. Many of you who have been watching or listening know I'm a huge, huge devotee of healing ourselves emotionally, physically. That's what inspired me to create om-heals.com and our Om.app matching algorithm to match people with the right energy practitioners and therapists around the world. I personally struggled with anxiety, depression, bulimia, and so this hits really close to home for me. I'm so committed that each and every one of you out there listening, that you take charge, you take hold, that you empower yourself and those you love to be able to realize that you are the master of your own universe. You are capable of healing your body, healing your emotions, and healing your mind. So, whether it's Dr. Brad's work or someone else's, please go out there and explore the infinite possibilities for your health and your well being that exist. Thank you for joining us.